If you're new here, and I didn't introduce or you didn't catch it, my name is Daryl Buckle. I'm one of the pastors here at Aaron Village. It's fantastic having you here. You all woke up, and it's painfully obvious to all of us that summer is done completely, and that's okay. So, as part of my summer reading, this summer, I read a book by ultra running legend Scott Jurek, and I know you're like, "Oh, Daryl, another running story. That's great." Yes, and so his latest book's called North. It's about his 2015 quest to get the FKT, the fastest known time of the Appalachian Trail. And you're thinking, is that a thing? It is. The Appalachian Trail is 2,200 miles long, and so what he was trying for is the fastest end-to-end running of this thing. And so to succeed, if you're doing the math in your head, he would have to run around 50 miles a day for 46 days consecutively to do that. And so this was his quest. I'll give away the end of the book. He did it. He survived, and his record lasted a whole year before someone else took it. So all of that pain and heartache for 1 year of thing, but it was awesome. So it's a great book, a lot of fun if you're into that kind of thing. So along the way, as you can imagine, it takes a lot of support and a lot of help for a quest to travel like that. Supporting him were friends and runners that would meet him on different sections of the trail and run for a spell with him and try and keep him from, giving up hope or getting in trouble. And so supporting him was another kind of ultra running legend named David Horton. David is this brass kind of old timer from one of those different era kinds of guys. And so at one point in the story, David has to go and do something else, so he finished running his thing. And then as he's leaving the camp, David, in his sort of trademark, Merca kind of voice, brass Merca, he shouts to Scott's wife, and he says, "Make sure you tell that boy it never always gets worse." I love that. It never always gets. Has ever happened to you when somebody who's maybe well-intentioned or well-meaning, some well-wisher comes into your life and tries to reframe the crisis that you're going through by saying, "Hey, it could be worse," and you just sort of look at them with a glazed look in your face. You say, "Great, thanks for stopping by. You should go now." Have you ever felt like? Have you ever felt when somebody with well-intention says, "Oh, hey, remember, listen, it could be worse"? Have you ever felt like, I'm not so sure that it could be worse, because it feels like you're pushing the boundaries of it keeps going from bad to worse. I've been there a few times in my life. Maybe you have too. Maybe it's so bad that you feel like, surely I've got unconfessed sin in my life, and God is punishing me for something that I must have done. Maybe God just hates me, actually, because if you're judging how God feels about you by his circumstances around you, maybe that's how you're doing the math. Maybe that sounds funny to you, but I actually know a whole lot of people who, if you push them, would probably admit that they hate God because of what they think God has done to them. Maybe you've wrestled with feelings like that yourself. And maybe they would say, "I hate God because of that." And maybe it's sort of more like people hate their personal trainer on Monday. Or teenagers hate their parents when they ground them on the night of a party or something like that. I don't know. I'm not trying to diminish or dismiss that, but this is what it says in Proverbs chapter 3. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 12 says, "My son," the Bible's getting all paternal on us, and he's patting us on the back. It could be worse. No, he doesn't say that. He says, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father, the son he delights in." Does that surprise you? Does it surprise you to think that God disciplines those he loves? He disciplines those he loves. Last week we started a series called Love Does, about how to discover a secretly incredible life. I'm just reading the subtitle. A secretly incredible life in an ordinary world. If you haven't read this book, I encourage you to pick it up. It's at Amazon, and it's a New York Times bestseller. You'll find it in Indigo or Chapters and all that kind of stuff. It's based on the books by Bob Goff. The whole premise of the book is that if we can learn to reframe love from a feeling to an action, that it'll sort of open the doorway to this incredible kind of life. And so in Love Does, Bob challenges us to look again at how Jesus reframes trials and challenges and failures. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, let me just say a quick word of prayer. Um, God, I kind of want to echo the prayer that Jemana prayed, that you would speak to each one of us as we're sort of looking at your word, as we're studying Bob Goff's book. Most of all, God, I'm imagining that everybody who came here today maybe is coming with a hope that you might speak to them, that you might possibly have something to say about them and their situation. God, I pray that that would be their experience today, that they would maybe feel surprised. Wow, God, you really are there. God, you really do have something you could say to me. God, give us that sense of awe as we come to your word now. In Jesus' name, amen. So, does it surprise you that God disciplines those he loves? Bob Goff says, the thing I love about God is he intentionally guides people into failure. He made us to be born as little kids who can't walk or talk or even use the bathroom correctly. We have to be taught everything. All of that learning takes time, and he made us so we're dependent on him and our parents and each other. The whole thing is designed so we try again and again until we finally get it right. Yeah, God leads us into challenges and even failure to grow you. And I know that that's just like the there. It could be worse kind of a sentiment if you're right in the middle of one of those crises or situations or challenges and you're not having much fun. You're looking at me, you're thinking, Buckle, why don't you just shut up and sit down? Challenges and failure grow you. So that's why God does it. They give you experiences that you need in your life. They build capacity in your life. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul, who's the author of much of the New Testament part of the Bible, he seems to be marveling at how God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who he calls the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort. That's kind of cool. You're thinking that sounds like kind of religious speak. Do you know about Paul that he was like stoned multiple times, that he was arrested, beaten, taken from his family, that he was like, do you know like what he went through? And how does he talk about Paul, or how does he talk about God? He calls him the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort. Don't just gloss over that part. That's kind of cool when you know his story. It says, the Father of compassion, the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. Actually love that. I love that. I love the thought that despite the trouble that Paul went through, he could still call God the God of all comfort, the God of all compassion. That's not what you call your personal trainer, is it? Next time you're at spin class and you're about to puke, just think, oh, you are the spin doctor of my comfort and the joy of my days. No, that's not how you think about him. I actually spent a day in the box with this guy. His name's Fun Bobby Kwasny. I don't know if that's actually his name, but that's how he goes, Fun Bobby. And we were filming a church video, and he had us doing some squats, and he said, "Come on, D-Buck," because of course everybody in Fun Bobby's life has a nickname, and who am I to argue with a guy as jacked as him? So he says, "Come on, D-Buck. The lower the butt goes, the nicer the butt grows." So if you're a guest with us here today, I just want you to know that's totally free. That's not really what we're talking about. Fun Bobby knows that the extra work, the extra effort, even the extra pain sometimes translates into gains, right? In Fun Bobby's world, that's the point. You gotta push yourself through the pain sometimes to get the gains that you're looking for. Paul says, when the God of all comfort comforts us in our troubles, we get to then see him use us to comfort others, no matter what the trouble, with the comfort we ourselves received from God. It's like Paul saying, there's purpose in your pain. Maybe you're going through something this morning. That's why you're here. Maybe Maybe you're looking for a sense of is there a reason? Is there something going on behind the scenes that can explain what I'm going through? Folks, I'm telling you, there's purpose behind the pain that you've gone through. And when you let God be your comfort in the midst of that storm, you will be amazed at what he can do. So let me just do it. This is my T-shirt. I'm gonna explain why I'm wearing a bright, sunny T-shirt today. It's from an organization called To Write Love on Her Arms, which is an organization created to let people suffering from depression and mental illness and from suicidal thoughts know that there's hope and that there's help and that the story of what they're going through matters and is important. And so, as you probably know from my story, I've had the privilege of walking through life with some pretty courageous people who themselves have courageously fought for a long time these kinds of battles. You know my story. I have also had to walk through the family with who have lost um, some courageous people who fought for a long time through battles like this. And so I was looking, just how do you get some purpose out of that? How do you find a way to bring purpose to the difficulty of losing somebody who you care about from suicide? And so um, I bought the T-shirt. That's what I did. I bought the T-shirt. I know that seems weird, but you guys know that. I hope you know I have experienced the supernatural love and the grace of God to comfort, to strengthen me as I've walked through some troubles like this. And so I thought I'm going to offer my much less ripped than Fun Bobby's upper kind of torso and whatever to be a billboard. I'm going to be a poster child for hope, for help, and so that people who may be struggling with that know that their story matters. Maybe my less ripped than Fun Bobby's upper half can still give somebody courage when they read that tomorrow needs you. Tomorrow needs you. Maybe that's what you needed to hear today. Tomorrow needs you. And if that's it, I hope you'll come and talk to me and say, Buckle, I needed to hear that today, because you know what? You never know what battle somebody's going through, right? Some of you have scars, actually, and I want to challenge and encourage you. If you're willing to share those things, God could use you and what you've gone through, that the hurt and the pain that you would love to just sweep away and get off of your life. God could use that to be a real source of encouragement and hope for somebody. So I want to challenge you to think about how God might use your story and your pain to encourage somebody. And so if you're facing a challenge right now, I just want you to know you're not alone. Okay? Can we do that? Okay. Poster child over, billboard over. As hard as it is, God uses the challenges like what you're going through. And he can even turn unjust or evil that you experience in this fallen world into something beautiful. I'm no farmer, but I have heard that crap makes you grow. Is that true? Yeah, the more crap you go through, maybe the deeper the pile, the more your capacity grows. He does. That's true, right? The more your capacity grows, the more challenge you're able to withstand, the more your resiliency through struggle grows. What used to be unimaginable becomes just another Wednesday. And I know you're like, Daryl, I don't want to grow in that way. I just wish he would stop. I'm not trying to dismiss that, but I also want to make sure that you know there is purpose to that stuff. It's making you grow. It's growing you, and you're gonna be stronger for it. Now, when I say that, you can take this the other way too, and I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying when I say that struggle and challenge and hardship makes you grow. Listen, your strength for battle and your resiliency through storms will absolutely grow, but it'll never replace your absolute dependence on Him. You know that's humanism, right? Humanism, right? If at some point you think, Buckle, well, this ain't my first rodeo. Like I've been through tough stuff. If you think at all for a minute that you can do it on your own, well, God help you. And here's why. Here's why I think that. Because listen, I believe that each one of you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of the God who created you in love. And And you have been created with almost unlimited potential for good and for love, because that's actually why God created you, to be caretakers of his creation. You've been tested and tried by experiences. You've grown in the ability to tackle all manner and means of challenges, but you were created to have a loving relationship with the God who made you. You were created to have a relationship. And if at some point you think, I can do it without him, your good will fall short. Eventually your good will fall short. If you think, I can do it without him, eventually your love will turn inside and grow sour and will spoil. No matter how competent you are and how much you're able to handle the challenges of this life, you will always live at less until you find and start to follow the way of Jesus, until you let God give purpose to the stuff that you go through in this life. Challenge and failure certainly builds capacity. It certainly gives you experiences, but way more important than all of that is that challenge and failure reminds us of our absolute dependency on him. I was watching a YouTuber this week, because I do that because all the cool kids do. It's a show called Impact Theory, and I love it. It's sort of motivational interviews with amazing and successful people. And on Impact Theory, there was this guest, and he had this amazing rags to riches story. He grew up in sort of abject poverty, and of course now is, successful and wealthy and all of this kind of stuff. And one of the things that he learned through going through trial after trial, something that he started to use as a personal mantra, if you will, it's this: if I can get through this, I can get through anything. Does that sound familiar? It never always gets worse. It's kind of like what you're saying. Never always. And this guy is so close. Like, he's so close because he's kind of right. Like, trials are temporary. You can and you should learn and build resilience, but there's something better than if I can get through this, I can get through anything. What is it? In Philippians chapter 4, the Apostle Paul's writing a thank you letter to this church that sent him some love and support in one of his seasons of trial and struggle and heartache. And so he's trying to sort of say thanks, but he's also encouraging them, because they're like, did you hear Paul got stoned again? No way, no kidding. Arrested again? He got beat up again? Like, they were worried about their man Paul because of all of the stuff he was going through. So he's trying to, this is Paul who's like, yeah, I got stoned, but don't worry about me. I'll be fine. He's trying to encourage them back despite what he's going through. And so he writes them this thing, and this is what he says. It's pretty cool. He says, I've learned how to be content with whatever I have. See, I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I've learned the secret of living in any situation, whether it's with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. And then he says the big one. He says, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. I'll tell you, you may not get that at all from the place where you are, but that's a way better mantra. That's a way better mantra. I can do all through Christ. I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. Because I'll tell you, self-confidence is great. If I can get through this, I can get through anything. Self-confidence is great, but God confidence is better. It's way better, because one of the things that God does in the storm is he gives you the ability to be content. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. You know my story. Like, I'm not even talking about my story. I'm just talking about, you guys know, the last month we've been walking through as a family, as a church family. You guys know this. When I say that he gives us the ability to be content in the storm, I'm not saying you won't ever crawl into the fetal position and cry like a baby, because you will. But you'll wake up the next day and say, something has changed in me today. You'll recognize the strength of God that you didn't feel 5 minutes ago or an hour ago or a day ago. And it's not that you'll never panic or fear or hurt or break down or doubt. It's not that you won't feel any of those things. You will also feel what Paul calls and uses the word content. Now, when he says content in the midst of poverty or in the midst of greatness or lack or fullness, he's not talking about complacency. He's not talking about laziness or lack of ambition. Sometimes people read this and say content must mean laziness or a lack of. No. Contentment is just a peace on the inside that's greater than the storm going on outside. Does that make sense? That's what contentment is. And remember, I've given you full disclosure. It's not that you won't do the fetal position, crying baby thing, because you still will, but you'll also have great moments of experiencing this peace on the inside that doesn't make sense given all that you're going through. It's a confidence that if God's for me, who can be against me? So instead of feeling overwhelmed by the challenges around you at work or at school or whatever, you're going to feel a sense of confidence. No, if God is for me, who can be? If I have Jesus, I have everything I need. He can do that. I'm telling you, He can do that in your life. Now, before you think it, that's not a power of positive thinking, delusional mumbo jumbo kind of thing, okay? Like a golfer in the rough who keeps telling himself, "There is no tree in front of me. There is no tree in front of me." That's not what I'm talking about. Paul says the secret of peace and contentment, the secret of living and flourishing in any situation, no matter how much, no matter how little, is that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This isn't in my notes. Some of you need to learn the secret. And what I mean by that is some of you haven't learned the secret of living in much. You're blessed like crazy, but you haven't learned the secret of being blessed like blah 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 blah. You haven't learned the secret of being blessed like crazy through Christ who strengthens you. And so when you experience a part of that world shaking, you won't be ready to live with Christ inside and giving you strength in the lack either. That's my rabbit trail. I'll be back to my notes now. No matter how much or how little, I can do everything through Christ who strengthens me. And you'll never know how far that can go until God asks you to go through something that you're not sure you can make it through. It will happen to you. You will have to do something one day that you're not sure that you have the strength to do. There's a American, I think he's a novelist. He has a quote I want to share with you. It's kind of like imagine yourself driving through this incredible national, like Yosemite or something, like just beauty all around you, and you're in awe. And some of you love the nature, and you're like, "This is fantastic." This is what he says. He says, "Pal, you can't see anything from the car. You got to get out and walk. Better yet, crawl on hands and knees over the sandstone, through the cactus. When the traces of blood begin to mark your trail, you'll see something, maybe." I actually kind of like that quote, and not just because I love imagining the beauty of a surrounding like that, but you guys know I've been through a desert or two. I've actually crawled through I know what that feels like to crawl through the desert. I also know what it feels like to see the beauty of God's goodness in those places of hardship or trial. Folks, there are parts of the goodness and the love of God that you can only see, you can only really begin to understand in the desert. Some of you are like, "Bucko, I should not have come today. I did not need to hear that I need to be here in this place." You just want an exit from the desert, and I get that. I just hope that you hold on to experience what God has for you. Let me ask you this. This is your question today. What would change in your life if instead of feeling frustrated and defeated every time you walked a hard road, every time you tried something and failed, what if you felt and became totally convinced of God's love for you? Because you started to believe that God disciplines those He loves. What if your first reaction to hardship and challenge was, "Wow, God must love me"? I'll tell you, I've been feeling lately, "Wow, God must love me." The second way that Jesus reframes challenge and failure is He redefines a pass or a fail. Turn to Matthew chapter 5 if you've got a phone or a Bible or something like that. Matthew chapter 5. He says, "You've heard that our ancestors were told, 'You must not murder. If you commit murder, you're subject to judgment. But I say, if you're even angry with someone, you're subject to judgment.'" Jesus says, if you call someone an idiot, you're in danger of being brought before the court. And if you curse someone, you're in danger of the fires of hell. And you're all thinking, "Wow, that escalated pretty quick." Yeah, right? Surprising, isn't it, to find out that maybe we've been shooting for the wrong target. Maybe we've been shooting for the wrong target. I think that's what they felt when Jesus went into this teaching. I confess this happens to me. I just when I think that I've got this whole life thing figured out, that I've got this whole faith thing figured out, because I'm a pastor, and I've got the T-shirt. So I'm thinking like I've got this thing down, and then something in my peripheral vision catches my attention, and I realize that, man, there's like whole parts of my life that I've been neglecting, whole parts of my life that God might is maybe saying, "Hey, Buckle, what about that? What about this part?" All right, I'll share. This happened to me this week. This past week, I was getting into my. I know this is gonna sound stupid. Bear with me. I was getting into my second or third episode on Netflix one night. Don't tell me you haven't done it. Something caught my attention in the midst of this, and it was like God was asking me, "Hey, Buckle, what's with the Netflix tonight?" And I knew the answer. Um, I, I've been, uh, I've been crawling through some deserts lately, guys, and the kids were in bed, Luana's in London. In the quiet of that night, I didn't want to have to feel the loss. So I was watching Netflix, and you're thinking, "Oh, come on, Daryl, you're getting on us about Netflix." No, I'm not. It's just like what everybody said. Did you come on, Jesus? You're getting on us because we called him an idiot. He's an idiot. Everybody knows that guy's an idiot. Jesus, really, what's the big deal? It's not a big deal, but I'll tell you, God was challenging me. He was challenging me, and it wasn't harsh. This kind of conversation that went on inside Buckle's head, on whatever Wednesday or whatever it was. It wasn't harsh. It was just Jesus saying, Buckle, why would you settle for Netflix when you could come and find health and healing with some time with me? It was like God was saying, I can heal that hurt so that you don't have to hide from it. I know it's so strange, but that was a big deal to me this week. To hear God saying, "No, Daryl, don't medicate that with Netflix. Like, don't medicate that with anything. I can actually heal. I can heal that hurt, so you don't have to hide from it." Maybe there's something in your life. Maybe you would recognize that there's something in your habits that's not actually getting you where you want to go. Maybe you're feeling a sense of frustration because you've wanted to be getting closer to your goals. The distance between where you are and where you thought you wanted to be isn't ever getting closer together. Maybe you recognize that there's some patterns in your own life that you can't shake, and maybe it's not obvious yet. You just know things aren't moving how you thought they should be moving. But if you're open to it, even this morning, Jesus might expand your field of view. He might sort of broaden your vision to be able to see things you weren't seeing before that could actually give you the breakthrough that you're looking for. That's what Jesus does in Matthew chapter 5. He expands the boundaries of what it means to love your neighbor as yourself. You've heard that. Love your neighbor as yourself. Christians believe that. It's kind of a core. In fact, it is the core. It's the single commandment of the New Testament. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love others. Love God. Love others. It's part of the thing. Jesus expands the boundaries. He blows up the boundaries of that, because in the kingdom of God, it's not enough simply to do not kill someone. So, like, that shouldn't surprise you. um, that God wants to heal some of the roots in our life that actually grow into stuff just as ugly as murder, anger, bitterness, unforgiveness, all that kind of stuff. The dark emotions that gain traction in our lives when we tear each other down. That's why Jesus reframes this when he links murder and slander. Did you see that? He links murder and slander. It shouldn't be a surprise to you. Like, you imagine that all of the angels in heaven and God are sitting around and they're watching you drive home, and they're sitting on the edge of your seat. And as soon as you turn off the car and open up your house, they erupt into this glorious applause. Yes, Michael Weaver did not kill anyone today. And they check the thing. You guys don't think that's how it goes, right? That there's stuff that God has for Michael Weaver that's bigger than just did not, kill anyone today. That's why Jesus isn't content to leave us with the gospel of abstinence. That's why we don't do this. It's just filled with prohibitions and thou shalt nots and all that. No, Jesus' plan from the start was to demonstrate and then to share through us, those of us who've decided to follow him, a gospel of action. Jesus didn't go around telling people, "Oh, he went around doing good." Why? Because love does. That's what he did. He wanted people to see what God's love for them looks like, and that's what we do too. The third way Jesus reframes failure is he moves the finishing line. I love this one. Bob says, I've realized that I used to be afraid of failing at things that really mattered to me, and now I'm more afraid of succeeding at things that don't matter. I like that. I actually find that both like equal parts inspiring and equal parts challenging. Anyone here admit to being a little bit afraid of failing? I'm afraid of failure, of course, right? Like I'm a little bit afraid of failure. Where do you see that? Do you see that at work? Is there a lot of stress when you've got a project at work or a presentation at work or a responsibility at work and you know it's going to be? Is that where it is? Is it in school? Is it in sports? Is it in your relationships? A fear of failing in your relationship? Maybe you had some bad relationships in your past, and so you're always a little bit afraid that something's going to happen to your own marriage, your own whatever. Does it eat at you while you're working away at something yourself? Or is it only the things that are sort of more public, where you have to risk a more public failure? Is that it? Bob says, I used to fear all of that stuff. I used to fear that stuff, and now I'm more afraid of succeeding at things that don't matter. What is he talking about? There's a scene in the classic Peter Pan with Robin Williams. You guys love that? You're gonna like go home now and watch Peter Pan with Robin Williams, where Peter Pan grows up into the successful but totally uptight lawyer. And through a series of happenings, he finds himself back in Neverland. This is one of the scenes you're watching there. One of the Lost Boys can't believe that this uptight, old man, lawyer guy with a paunch belly is Peter Pan. And so he looks at him and he takes off his glasses and he starts to pull at his face and stretch him. And he's trying to figure out if this could possibly, and accidentally, in a second, he stretches and he accidentally stretches Peter's face into a smile. And then he says, oh, there you are, Peter. It is you. Folks, there are some circles like in the personal development and success movement that encourage you to fake it until you make it. Have you ever heard that before? Fake it until you make it. It's the idea, though. It's just the idea that if you adopt the attitudes and habits of successful people, even before you've paid off your credit card debt, maybe it will help you pay off your credit card debt. And maybe in the business world, confidence and self assurance can help. But, folks, in the real world, there's just full of people pretending to be something that they're not to impress people they don't even like. Right? Church, we should be more afraid of succeeding at things that don't matter. We should be more afraid of pretending to be something that we think others want us to be instead of the person God created us. And I promise you, the person that God loves and redeemed us to be. We should be afraid that we'll structure and build our lives to avoid pain instead of growth. We should be afraid of spending every night watching Netflix instead of growing into the full and free person that God. We should be more afraid of avoiding conflict instead of pursuing truth and goodness. We should be afraid of that. We should be afraid of avoiding risks instead of walking in obedience. Like there's things that we should be afraid of. We should be afraid that our life becomes this fake thing instead of becoming fully who God created us to be. We should be afraid of that we're spending ourselves climbing up the ladder only to find that we've actually been leaning the ladder on the wrong building the whole time. Jesus was actually talking about this when he says, what would it profit a man if he gained the whole world yet forfeited his soul? Yeah, sometimes we get this whole idea of success wrong, don't we? Ephesians 4, Paul challenges us to live a life worthy of the calling you've received. Listen, you don't need to really have a lot of faith figured out to still get that. Live a life worthy of the calling you've received. Don't live a life worthy of the calling someone else has received. Right? Don't live worthy of your own calling. When I'm posing, I'm not living into my own calling. I'm living into someone else's calling or no one else's calling, in fact. And when you lose sight of who God created you to be, and this is the point at which I hope that I kind of hope that God would do something inside you as I say these words. When you lose sight of who God created, the good, impactful, generous, loving, and forgiven person that God created you to be, you lose sight of that, it's easy to slip into all sorts of unhealthy patterns about self, patterns even of sin. And before you know it, our lives can just get filled with crap, stuff, and habits, and hang-ups, and addictions, and distractions, and insecurities. And I wonder what that conversation sounded like. Where Bob was having that kind of conversation. I don't know how your conversations with God goes, whether God just kind of speaks to you audibly. He doesn't speak that way to me, but I wonder how that conversation sounded like, where Bob realized that he had been chasing after and maybe even gloriously succeeding at something that didn't matter. That somewhere along the running of his life, the day, remember, I don't know if you know this, Bob Goff is a really successful lawyer. Like, he's really good, and he's written some books, and it's just, like, I wonder if at some point in the running of Bob Goff's life he lost sight of the true prize. He lost sight of what he was actually supposed to be striving towards. I wonder what that sounded like.